Good morning. It's Terry from Material Rewards with our Tuesday Tidbits. Today we thought we would, this is very basic, but we thought, some people really are astounded by the basics. So Marty and I are going to show you how we like to put a binding on a quilted item, be it a big quilt, little quilt. We do the same technique no matter what we do.
And we have 2 cents about everything, so we have to tell you how the right way to do it.
Yeah, this is what we consider our right way. And excuse I said to Marty, wait a minute, is the makeup artist running late today? It's pouring rain outside. But anyways, okay.
And she's not moving real swiftly.
Yeah, I'm not moving swiftly at all. So, and the other thing too, and this is just going to be another proof. Some people are like, well, how can you sew because your right foot is still boo-booed? You can sew with your left foot very easily. Just try it. Just try it. So, yeah, I've been sewing with my left foot since the whole stair debacle broken bone thing. So anyways,
and I've been doing it for years and it works really well.
Yeah, back to the point. All right, so what you're going to do, the first thing you're going to do with your quilt is you're going to trim it. And usually you want to trim all the layers together. You want to make sure that it's nice and straight. And I like to make sure that my points or my corners are 90 degrees. Use your rulers. That's what they're there for.
Lay part of that out flat real quick.
Okay, this is our friend Nancy's quilt that she doesn't even know we're using, but we're going to use it. It's a real cute, patriotic house quilt.
So when I trimmed this, she put on, I think it was a 4.5 inch border. So what I did is I used my 4.5, it must have been a 5-inch border. So I put a 4-inch line on my ruler and then trimmed it all the way around, even then put a square in the corner and made sure that it was nice and true that way too.
So just make sure that your angles or your edges are straight, okay? The next thing you have to do is you have to have your binding. Now, as far as the width of the binding, that is your personal preference. I don't like to get them too small for big things because it just makes it harder on your hand when you're doing them. And it's also really small.
We're all getting arthritis.
Yes. So for bigger, reasonably sized quilts, we usually cut them either 2.5 or 2 3/4. It's up to you if you want it to be a little more showy.
Sometimes 3.
Yeah, if it's flannel, we do go to 3. Yeah. So anyways, cut your binding whatever size you want it to be. You're going to fold it in half, wrong sides together. You're going to seam them together on the bias, which is right here. I think you all know how to do that. We're not going to waste time going through that.
Flip it so that they can kind of see the angle when it.
So what you would be doing is if you were, okay, you're coming down, you're sewing like this. You would take your next strip and you would do what I call a back. Well, if I can find the end, it was right there a minute ago. Where is it?
It's like
Here
noodles.
it is. Yeah. You're going to do a backwards L. So you're going to go right sides together. Here's your next strip. Pretend this is the end of that one. Backwards L, and you're going to go outside angle to outside angle. This is an inside angle. You don't want to go that way. It's not going to work. Outside to outside. You're just going to stitch that, and that's what you'll get. All right?
Yep.
I think you all know that. We need to keep going here.
Moving on.
Yes. So what I like to do, and again, there are 101 different ways to put on a binding. This is how we do it. This is how we like to do it. This is how we've done it for 100 years.
So of course it's correct.
So when you are taking your beginning strip, what you want to do is you're going to fold it down like a sew, press it, and then fold it in and press it. All right? And I'm just finger pressing it. Then you're going to open it back up, take your scissors, and you're going to cut, leaving yourself a generous 1/4 inch. And then when you fold it back, that's what it looks like. So what we're going to be ending up doing is we're making a little pocket. All right? So now we're ready to start sewing this puppy. You need to use a walking foot and even feed foot. Absolutely no question about it. An even feed foot, what happens is when you have a regular presser foot on, you have your little feed dogs, and when you've got just 2 layers of fabric, the feed dog feeds that through very nice and evenly. But when you try to introduce batting in it, what's going to happen is everything is going to start rumpling up, and you're going to get puckers and gathers. An even feed foot, when you put this little prongy thing over top of the screw, the needle screw, which I'm going to show you, do you see that little plastic thing goes up and down? This little part here. That means it's going to walk over top. So it's going to go thump, 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 rather than sliding and rumpling.
So you either on your walking foot have a fork like that, or it's just a straight one that
you're
going to put on top of your. Okay, sorry, my fingers are in the way.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to be able to really see this. But anyways, look at your instructions. And now I'm talking and I'm not thinking. Okay, where is...
You kind of have to do one of those rubby tummy
There
pat your
you
head
go.
kind of thing. So
There
you're
you go.
taking it in at an angle and then
But you
popping
see
it
how
out.
that little fork thing is right over top of your needle screw right there. So every time I go up and down, my needle goes up and down. That's going to walk.
Yeah.
All right?
It's got to move. If you're not moving it, then it's not
Something
on
is
correctly.
wrong. Yep, something is wrong. Okay. And then what you've got to do is determine your seam allowance. And for bigger pieces, I don't like to just arbitrarily say, yep, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It depends on the thickness of your batting, the thickness of your fabric,
Thickness of your binding.
everything. It's just going to depend on everything. So what you're going to do, and I like to start a little bit down from a corner. I don't like to start on a corner. So I'm going to line up all of my edges. Now we're going to be lined up. And again, I know on my machine where everything is going to go.
I got to get in here somewhere.
Can you see now? Am I in your way?
No, I think you're good.
All right. So what I did on this machine, oh, I thought it was that fly touching me. It was the camera. All right. What I'm going to do is I took my needle position and I moved it all the way over to the right. So that moved the needle over. So that means I'm going to run the edge of my presser foot right along there. And I'm going to show you how that works out in the end. If you've got 2 people, it's great to do it with 2 people. One person can be the holder, but the person in the seat is the driver. Don't let them be the driver. They're just the holder. So I also like to lengthen my stitch a little bit. Go up to about a 3.5. You don't need to have this a tiny, tiny stitch. Oh, the other thing I wanted to show you too. When you start, okay, remember my little pocket here? You're going to start like down right about here. Don't start up here, start right about there.
Or further down, it's up to you.
Don't go too far, but
Sometimes
just go,
I'll stick a pin in that top part just so it doesn't flail on you too.
And I don't like to because then I always end up sticking myself.
See, there you go.
Yep, see. All right, this is going to sound really stupid, but I've shown people and they really like the idea. Take your fingers, and this is how you want to put grab your binding. Between your index finger and your middle finger, all right? So what I'm doing is right here, I am going to gently tug on this.
Gently.
I'm not reaming on it. Yeah, I'm not reaming on it so it pulls it off from under the needle. But what you want to do is you don't want to have a ripply edge to your quilt. And if you tend to just pull this gently, you're going to just feed the quilt in a hair faster than the binding.
But if you pull it too much, then you're actually going to add to that rumple.
Right, you're going to cup it.
It's a fine line in there.
Right, okay? So I'm just going to start stitching. Go a little farther. Again, I like to hold it. I'm like scissoring it there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach back here and I'm going to fold this over and say, yep, that's good. You want to fold it over nice, not tight, but you don't want a big old bubble or a flat space, an empty space, I think it's called. So you want to make sure it goes over nice and it's going to cover your stitch line back here.
So basically what you're doing is when the fold comes over on the binding, you've covered your stitch line and your seam allowance is filling that binding.
Right.
So you
I'm
either
not
have
pushing.
to increase or decrease it if you're getting a problem. If it's not,
Right.
If the seam allowance is not filling the binding, then you need to knock your needle position back towards the center one.
Right. And that's really kind of common sense. Okay, so we're going to just now, and I'm going to zip right down to the corner, so talk quietly amongst yourselves. Oh, Marty, that is so bad. We could probably get in trouble for
Infringement.
copyright infringement or something.
I'll let them come after me now.
You get to the point after you've done enough of these bindings that you know where your needle position needs to be. It just becomes second nature. And again, you know enough to, if you have a quilt that's kind of woggedy and there wasn't much you could do when you were piecing it, you're going to pull it a little bit tighter and you'll be amazed at the problems it can fix. Okay, so now I'm coming down to one of my corners. So what I'm going to do, normally people would say stop 1/4 inch. No, I'm going to stop whatever my distance on my seam allowance, be it 3/8, 1/8, 1/4, whatever that distance is from this raw edge, I'm going to stop. I'm going to back up, and then I am going to bring it out, cut my threads, and flip it around.
Like you're going down the next side.
Right, because now I'm getting ready to go down the next size. Okay, so I'm holding it out straight. Put my thumb right there. I'm going to flip it up. I will do that again. I'm going to flip it up.
And you see how you have a straight, wait, I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
Yeah, line right there.
Right there. Straight edge right there. Okay.
So I'm going to hold that, and then I'm going to flip it down. So you go out, flip it up, flip it down.
If you don't get that straight edge, then you've either gone too far or not far enough on
Right.
on your stop.
So what I've created here is this little triangular thing here. So everything should be straight, straight, and straight. I'm going to start right at the edge, and I'm going to start stitching again. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pause for just a sec, and I'm going to finish the quilt so I can show you how to do the ending. Okay, so hang on.
We'll be right back.
Okay, we're back. I miraculously ran around the whole rest of the quilt. So now I'm back
Thank God
to...
it wasn't a big one.
Yeah. I'm back to almost the beginning. So what I did, and this is what Marty was talking about, if you feel more comfortable, you can put a pin in right in here so you make sure you keep that diagonal flap down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come down here. Now I've got lots of binding left over, but and again, some people will now take it off and stitch it, but we just never have felt the need for that. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. I'm going to stop before I sew over and hit the pin and have it break and poke in my eye, which is all I would need.
So the machine.
I'm going to take my pin out and I'm going to sew just so I'm on that. So I can flip this up and say, yep, everything is secure. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to say, yep, in order to tuck it in that little pocket, I need about that much. This is scrap. Oh, I want to show you something about that. Hang on. So anyway, so I'm going to now take this and I'm just going to tuck it in that little pocket. Make sure everything is nice and flat. And then I'm just going to sew and meet my previous stitch line. And if that flips over, it's not a big deal. So when you are hand stitching this is always the place I start. I would take this, I would bring my needle up right here, and I do a little whip stitch and close that seam right there. So it's going to look like every other seam on the quilt. And then I bring the needle out, and I'm ready to, that'll pop in there. I'm ready to flip this over and hand sew it across. Now, when you are hand sewing, it's just like you normally would sew binding. So I'm not a user of clips. Some people love the clips. Do whatever makes you happy. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull this over. Now, when you get to the corners, what I usually do is I pull that over. So do you see how this is going nice and straight across there? So I stitch all the way out to here, turn my needle, bring my needle back in there.
And then it's nice to kind of hold that little inside.
Right.
You gotta quit moving around quite so much.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I gotta move the quilt. So that, and then you start stitching right there, and that is going to be your perfect little miter. Miter on the front, on the back, got it? Yep. And miter on the front.
Okay.
All right, so those are your miters. Now, if you were entering this in a judged show, you technically would have to go through and stitch that little miter so that there wasn't a little hole there. That's a big hoo-ah thing, but I don't bother on a daily basis. Now, if this was going to be a wall hanging, for example, say that Nancy wanted to hang this, she could make a sleeve, and at this point, this is when you would attach the sleeve. We're going to pretend that this is our sleeve, so you would take however wide a sleeve you want, and you would fold it, just like we did the binding, fold the little end in so it's got a clean edge, and what you would do is go to your edge. You would stick that there, and then you would just baste this right along the very edge. So you're basting it within the seam allowance.
So put leave your walking foot on, right. Do it the longest stitch that you've got on there, and just run it in the seam allowance.
That way, when you go to sew your binding, you're going to cover that part, and then you'll just have to go behind and whip stitch the bottom part down, making sure that you don't go through to the top part of the quilt, okay? Because you don't want big stitches showing there. So that's how we do a binding. It's not hard once you've done 100 of them like we have. You really get into kind of a routine. As I say, if you've got somebody to help you hold the weight, if not, try to get a space that you could put a chair or something, a chair back that'll take the weight from you. It makes a huge difference. I can't think of anything else we want to say. For all those who came to the picnic, I hope you had a good time. It was great. It really was a good time. We'll try to do it again next year if you missed it this year.
And next week we'll look forward. We've got some new stuff to show you.
Yes, and hopefully
Don't say it.
Oh,
Don't say it.
All right, and we're not going to say it.
All right.
That's it. Bye.
See you later. Bye. Hi guys, I just wanted to add a little PS to the Tidbit Tuesday video for this week, because this quilt, when I'm putting a binding, is a little bit different. Oops, I got to turn this the other way. A little different situation where I have the pattern is coming right out to the edge and you don't have a border onto it. So in instances like, let me get you back here. Like here, if I had trimmed this off to the 1/4 of an inch and I was doing the binding like we just told you, you would have lopped that off and you would have not had a point there. So options are is on something like this, you either put a border on it, or what you can do is rather than trimming this, and see if I can get this without the glare, rather than trimming this straight with the edge, what I did is I trimmed it so that the 3/8 inch line is sitting right on the point, because remember, you're not doing a 1/4 inch seam when you're doing the binding. This one is going to be a little bit deeper, so that's why I went to the 3/8 inch, because this is a big quilt and I don't want a little tiny mingy binding on here if you went with the 1/4. So this is just another thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind. I mean, sometimes you have like star points around the outside edge. So it doesn't matter that the top doesn't go back. And you can see there's places along in here where I have just backing and batting, but when I put my binding on, I'm gonna line it up with this edge, not that edge. So something else to keep in mind. Okay, thanks, bye.